you might think this as well, is it feels like a willpower problem. I mean, even when you listen to, I remember listening to Jocko Willink on this one podcast, and it was actually annoying me. And I like listening I liked listening to Jocko Willink, but this thing was just like, this guy was pinpointing the thing I was struggling with. It's like, dude, I know what I want to do. I'm just really struggling to get myself to do it. And his answer was basically, just do it. And I get where he's coming from like somebody who's got that mentality of like, I just do. But that doesn't work for most people. It just doesn't really work for most people. And I think in all of that, you start to think it's a willpower problem. It's like, man, I know what I need to do. I know how to do it. I just don't want to do it. And it's like, man, I can't muster up the willpower to do it. But what if you're solving the entire problem incorrectly to begin with? What if it's not a willpower problem? Because the obvious answer is usually the wrong one. Most people look at this situation and come to the same conclusion. I need more discipline. I need more motivation. I need to try harder. But you've tried harder before. You've had motivation before. You've had discipline before. And yet here you are. Because the problem isn't that you don't know enough. And the problem isn't that you don't care enough. The problem is that you've been trying to solve a structural problem with willpower. And those are not the same thing. Because most battles are long lost before they even begin. The person you want to become is not separated from you by discipline. He's separated from you by structure. That's the part nobody tells you. Because discipline gets all the attention. Discipline sounds impressive. Discipline sounds masculine. Discipline sounds like the answer. But discipline is expensive. And you're wasting it on battles that should never even exist in the first place. Once you start looking for this, you see it everywhere. The gap between who you want to be and who you are is not a discipline thing. It's not because you're weak. If you're anything like me, you might tend to actually have a view of like, man, that person that I look up to, whether it's like a fictional character like Harvey Specter or like an athlete, like say like Ronaldo or whatever, the gap between that person and me is willpower. Like I'm just not as disciplined as them. And I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I'm oversimplifying this a lot. I mean, the gap between you and Cristiano Ronaldo isn't just discipline and structure and all this stuff. There's a lot that goes into that. But if we're keeping it simple, the gap between who you want to be and who you are, you look at that as a discipline problem. Like you're weak. But these guys that you look at don't become exceptional simply because they've got this all-encompassing discipline. Like they just got this capacity for willpower that you just don't seem to have. That's not the case at all. The big difference is environment. Your current environment keeps encouraging the wrong behaviors. It makes it so easy for you to carry on falling back into your old patterns. And that's why when I made my monk mode video about 2 weeks ago, I spoke about the importance of setting up an environment, right? An environment that keeps you locked in. James Clear speaks about this in Atomic Habits. He makes a big deal about environment, setting up an environment, and he gets into the science of like, a habit it starts with the environment. There's a cue, and then there's a response, and I forgot, I read it a long time ago, but basically there's kind of a way your brain works, and it starts by the environment. If you're somebody who's used to scrolling in bed or whatever, and your routine is, I finish eating, I feel really full, I go brush my teeth, whatever, I come back to bed, my phone is by the side of my bed, I get in bed, I use my phone, and then I spend 2-3 hours on TikTok, YouTube, whatever the case is. Then your brain starts to see that pattern, and then now when you eat and you go brush your teeth and you come into your room, it's the same room, your phone is in the same place. Even if you decide, man, I need to change this habit, it's a bad habit, I need to go to sleep early, your brain is trained for that system. It's trained for that sequence, right, of eat, brush teeth, lie in bed, go on my phone, and then sleep, right? So you need to change the environment if you're going to change that, right? The gap is not a weakness thing. It's not that you have a willpower problem. It's you need to change the environment, right? What if you lived in a whole different place where you didn't have a phone in your bed? Say you went, and this is why I always find it interesting, like observing the military. Why men, when they go to the military, they're like completely disciplined, and then when they come back, they just fall back into like their old habits, and they go back to taking drugs. Same thing with rehab. It's an environment issue. You've taken somebody out of the existing environment that's created the person they are, the bad habits that they have, and you've put them into an environment that doesn't allow for that to happen, and they find it relatively easy, right, to kind of shed off the old habits because the environment is a new environment. There's no drugs, there's no like phone or whatever, like there's no thing that's bringing them back down to their old level. It's a new environment, and it reminds me of this thing. I don't know if it is from Atomic Habits, or if it's from another video I've heard, but it's adjacent with this whole idea, is that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And that is it. I mean, if you could condense this whole video into one thing, it's that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And those people that have been put into a new environment change completely. But then you take them out of that environment and you put them back into their old environment, they change back to their old person, because that's just how the brain works, right?